Most of the Notebook takes place in the South of the 1940s, a time not all that long ago, but in some ways lost forever.
The nice thing about the South in those days is there was time. Just sit on the porch and read, and just going for a little bike ride in the afternoon, and you're not doing anything much together.
And action.
Director Nick Cassavetes and his team journeyed to South Carolina's Lowcountry to find locations that would evoke the bygone era of Noah and Allie's story.
I really enjoyed looking at the script, trying to decide what it is that we have to find and what it is we're going to have to change once we found it.
The crew set up production offices in North Charleston at the old Navy base and shot numerous scenes in the residential community where the officers used to live.
The Admiral's house is a grand southern mansion that sits on a high bluff, so that interior of that house provided lots of rooms that were used in the film.
A desanctified Navy chapel on the base underwent some strange transformations.
It became the USO dance hall, it became the infirmary, it became the exam room, and it became the recruiting hall.
Charleston's historic district provided many locations for the film.
So you're acting in these sets that are basically like they were created for the movie, but they're real, you know, and you walk down Charleston, these cobblestone streets, and it does kind of put you in that world a bit.
But some work still had to be done to return a 3-block stretch of Charleston's legendary King Street to the specific look and feel of the 1940s.
The art department did an incredible transformation of the street to change it to period. They took out all the contemporary parking meters and put in period parking meter heads on the meter spaces. Each storefront had to be contacted and contracted with to allow us to change the signage, change window dressings, and so forth for a 3-block walk and talk.
I haven't seen a movie in ages.
Really?
The movies that have affected me the most have been period movies. And to sell a time period, you have to do a lot of things. It's not just redressing the set, but it's wardrobe, it's hairstyles, it's the way people walk, it's the way they talk. And when they do that and they convince you that you're in another world, it's when you're really transported.
At the southern end of King Street is the American Theater, the scene of Noah and Allie's first date. The Art Deco movie house was built during World War II, closed down in 1970, and reopened in the late 90s.
We wanted to make sure that it was saved. And the community has been very, very supportive of us, which makes us different than a multiplex that may be in a suburb. Because of the stories that the theater has, it connects with people, it's emotional.
Some of these emotions were surprisingly powerful.
An elder black gentleman in his late 80s looked right at me and he says, "Son, you don't remember this, but last time I was here at this theater, I wasn't allowed to walk through these doors."
When the American Theater operated in the 40s, the South's Jim Crow laws called for separate entrances for blacks and whites.
And that's very profound, especially for someone of my generation who does not remember the civil rights efforts. And that was an important part of American history.
A much older piece of history provided another convenient shooting location.
Right next door is a home that William Aiken built. Home was constructed in 1808, and that offered a multitude of opportunities for this film crew. They were able to do the dress fitting scene in the context of a historical period home. The Aiken house was originally a Charleston single-style home. It's very traditional for this area. The single style, it was crafted after the necessity of needing to circulate air during the hot summer months. Having a home a single room wide allowed you to open up windows on both sides of the home for airflow.
Charleston's single-style homes brought relief from more than just heat and humidity.
Taxation was also based upon linear feet that you would have on the street front. So it was very advantageous for the home builder not only to have a Charleston single-style home, because if your home was very narrow, then your street frontage was very narrow, so your taxation was very little.
Only 15 minutes from downtown Charleston was one of the film's key locations, the Boone Hall Plantation, a mansion set amid 738 acres of woods and wetland. This became the summer home for Allie and her parents. The first house on this land was built in 1617. The current mansion was constructed just after the Civil War by plantation owner Thomas Stone.
He wanted a grander style house than what was originally here at the time that he bought it. It is a Georgian style revival mansion, more of a, I guess you would say, a Hollywood version of the South.
It emanates wealth. It has the most grand avenue of oaks in the area approaching the house.
A lot of our visitors drive down the avenue, and of course they think of Gone with the Wind. Now, Gone with the Wind was not filmed here, but they did come here and take a photo of this Oak Avenue, took that photo back to Hollywood, and that may have been the photo they used to build the set of the avenue that was going to Ashley Wilkes's 12 Oaks.
Well, you know, there's this recurring theme in Southern literature. I mean, Tennessee Williams has it, Faulkner has it. Everybody has this thing of the plantation. The mansion and the plantation and that whole thing is just part of the deal.
Just outside Boone Hall's Grand Gate is a memory of another side of the Old South.
Of course, in the front of the house, as you come down the avenue, you'll see the 9 original slave cabins. Those would have housed the house servants or the blacksmiths, the craftsmen on the plantation, and they were considered elite in the slave system. The slaves who would have worked, you know, in the fields and all would have had their houses elsewhere nearer the fields.
How does a poor boy who works in a lumber yard impress a girl who spends the summer in a place like this? He builds his own mansion.
I'm gonna buy it one day. I'm gonna fix it up. All it needs is a new floor and new walls and roof.
Is that all?
And plumbing and electric.
And furniture?
Yeah, and some furniture.
Well, what about me?
What do you want?
I want a white house with blue shutters. And a room overlooking the river so I could paint.
Anything else?
Yes. I want a big old porch that wraps around the entire house.
Okay.
This house in the script was basically another character, so it was really critical that we find the right house.
Finding the rundown ruin that became Noah's dream house raised a big chicken and egg question.
Was I looking for a property to build the 2 structures? Was I looking for a rundown plantation house that we could shoot rundown and then fix it up? We looked at everything.
Cassavetes decided to take Martin's Point, a beautiful low-country waterfront home, and work backwards.
We could transform it to its rundown state, and then we could bring it back to his vision of glory.
Just across the Sound from Martin's Point is the isolated Edisto Island. This barrier island was the location that became the Calhoun home, a place filled with its own sort of warmth.
Frank Calhoun's house had to have character. Just like the larger houses have grand porches, this house had not a grand porch, but a wonderful porch.
And action!
The southern porch is important. It's what takes your world from the inside and where it meets the outside, and where you bring your friends from the outside to the inside.
The Notebook begins and ends in an elegant nursing home. The filmmakers chose a gracious plantation at the tip of South Carolina's Grand Strand.
The nursing home had to be in a tranquil setting, and I don't think you could find a more tranquil and beautiful setting than Black River Plantation House.
In the early 20th century, this was the home of the Waddell family. It looks like a classic Southern mansion. Well, it is, and it isn't.
Back in '86, we realized the inside beams had Georgetown, South Carolina written in blue chalk. And we couldn't understand why, unless someone was shipping these beams and inside interiors to Georgetown.
Further research revealed that the Black River Plantation started out as a kit house ordered from Chicago through the Sears Roebuck catalog around 1920.
This is the Magnolia Kit House, one of 4, and the only one that went to the south. The other 3 are up north. The home itself in the catalog was $5,300.
Buying the house was easy. Building it was harder.
When the Waddells started building their house, he had written a road and river on the wrong side of the blueprints. And when he came back 4 or 5 months later, when the house was about dried in, they realized they'd had them backwards. So the house is basically turned in the opposite direction than it's supposed to be. But they did some renovation work and changed the interior so you won't notice it. But yeah, It was supposed to be the other way around.
Allie and Noah first met in the fictional town of Seabrook. The filmmakers didn't have to go far to find a small-town southern Main Street.
The town that was chosen is the old village of Mount Pleasant, which is directly across the harbor, just 2 miles from Charleston. This actual little hamlet existed as support for a shrimping village.
The art department worked its magic to turn back the clock to the summer of 1940.
The transformation was gorgeous. The people in the town felt like they had stepped back to the times that many of them remember, and they felt like the work that the film company did was a compliment and a blessing and a salute to their past.
And action.
When people are looking through a lens of a camera, you really do catch a personality. And it's not just the personality of the actors, but it's also the personality of the venues themselves, because they have to come alive.
Well, I guess when you see the South, when it's exposed on the big screen, you really learn to appreciate it more. It means more to your heart, and you really got to preserve it. Keep an eye and be a good steward of what we have.